Hello there, everyone. How's everyone doing this Friday afternoon? Yes, Barbecutie. DE Nova is a Half-Life map for Counter-Strike 2, Half-Life themed map, based on Nova Prospect. I am doing very well. Okay, let's let's open the map up if it wants to. There we go. Let me turn off the place brushes and welcome to that little bit of D2 Prison '04, just a little bit past the shower room antline guard battle. This is a one site map. So the site is in this room. This is where you press the button to open this gate to then head through here. And then I apologize for the jittery nature. But yeah, and then you go up here, and then you enter the big room. Uh, and this is an area that is blocked off normally, but I have made this part of CT spawn. And I used a tiny bit of the work I did on the Gmod maps to bring this little behind the scenes area to life. Some of these props are from Half-Life Alyx. Some of them are from CS2 Vanilla, like this panel here. And this version of the ammo box from Half-Life 2 is actually from Aperture Desk Job. Uh, the last time I touched this map was a couple of weeks ago. I added in some extra foliage. My thinking is that Nova Prospect is quite abandoned by the Combine, even if they still use it, and so it's sort of falling apart, and weather is and nature is bleeding into the building itself. And I'm because Cache and Train have been released, and they are also containing a lot of Soviet era stuff. I've been thinking of putting in more props and textures from those maps. Yes, this is Counter-Strike 2, though this is based on a map that I had created for CSGO way back in the day. Called It's the same thing, DE Nova. I have a Gmod port of this map, of the original version of this map, not the CS2 version. The CS2 version is currently out, but with some of the new content, I figure might as well come back and add more. I did do a brief detour into my dead center stuff last week. That was because I needed to do a little bit of experimentation, and someone had mentioned that there was a pretty glaring issue with that, and I wanted to get that done. So I did that over the streams. But today I want to return to this. Thank you, Dr. Susher, for the subscription. I appreciate that. All right. Now, as for actually bringing stuff from Cache or Train, into this map, Valve have created something for Counter-Strike 2 development called zoos. Zoos are maps that contain all of the assets used in a map, to just showcase them for people who use Hammer that want to pull stuff and want to see how a map is made without having to do the decompilation of a map. So all sorts of textures, props, all sorts of cool things like that. And there is one for train that I'm also going to open up. Yeah, here we go. As it turns out, this is a practice that has had origins since the Half-Life 2 beta. I have come across a couple of little test environments sort of like this among my studies of the beta. Why is this very odd? Anyways, yes, this is the stuff from Train. So this will be very helpful in replacing and adding in new props. I've already got a couple of ideas here just looking at this. I'm very glad to hear that you've started working on the episode 1 stuff soda for lunch. The episode 1 stuff should be very interesting. Of Marcoast, are you talking about the process of adding, like creating the zoo? Also, thank you for the subscription uh, to the CS2 version of DE Nova. Uh, Yeshel? Is that how you pronounce your name? I apologize if I butchered that. The process for creating the zoo Marcoast appears to be for a manual thing, a manual effort, I think, at least from what I've seen. So Valve and Level Designer actually had to place down all these props, from what I can tell. Ooh, I like that soda for lunch. The ability to stabilize it. That'll be a fun bit of gameplay for Sandbox. Citadel O3 is the core itself with the big sphere, correct? If I'm not mistaken. My knowledge of the episode 1 maps is not quite to the degree of regular Half-Life 2. But let's see if we can grab something here or there for this. Typewriters, AC units, brick. Nova Prospect is made of a lot more plaster than brick, though there might be some brick underneath that plaster. That is usually how those things are made. Metal grates. Do think we would see some clocks in various office and back rooms, though, so that can be something we can work with. If I haven't already put one in, I have not. Let's get some clocks in here. Bit big. Ah, it's a smart prop. So smart prop is a sort of, if you know the Unreal Engine, it's sort of like a blueprint in a way. Technically, Mark Host, there is the editor does sort of do that. It just doesn't put it down on a map in the same way, but it does keep track of everything you use in the map. So this here, it's hard to see because this view toggle here is blocking it. But as you can see, there is a used in map tab down here that shows you everything that is obviously used in a map. But because that's only viewable in the map files that can be edited, and we don't have the essentially the editable maps for train or cache, we can't use this feature. So Valve have instead manually created a zoo for us, so that way we can see what's used on the map without having to decompile the whole thing. Though obviously you still can. There are tools for Source 2 to decompile maps, including those in Counter-Strike 2. Another clock down here. There we go. Always make sure to save, no matter what you're doing, hammer editing or otherwise. Saving is a very important thing to do. Okay. Someone mentioned previous time I did this that this was a form of window shopping, and I agree. All good, Mark Host. Um, I've never actually met someone who's used the editing suite for the Call of Duty maps. For so, Leston, are you talking about what's currently on screen, or are you talking about previously? This is Source 2 Hammer, if you're talking about what's on screen. I'm so sorry, Soda for lunch. Hopefully, the autosave is relatively recent when you try and boot up your map again. Okay. This will be actually very good to work with. I believe these are props. Yeah, this is actually a static prop. That will be very useful. I guess the decision, I've always believed that based on some of the texturing that the Nova Prospect walls were plaster over brick rather than wood. Though I guess wood inside of that. There's a destroyed wall somewhere, I think. I have to find it. This one's a lot bigger than the one for cash. Regardless of that, I can always come back. Let's see. Yes, I do want some more plant work as well. Now that I've added these clocks in, I would like to add in more on this concrete here to really drive home that the outside world is bleeding in. And while I've added stuff from cache, I think a couple things from train would work lovely. The devil is in the details in more than one way, as it is both the thing that can drive a person to perfection, but it can also make or break certain ideas. Might need to beat up the ceilings a little bit more to get more grass around. One thing that Source 2 has is that it has a built-in asset packer. When you go to post things on the workshop, rather than having to do a separate program previously, it's now actually built into Source 2's functionality. Um, so I do have to keep all the same Gmod packing rules in mind while making stuff. Usually that just means reusing stuff that I bring in more than once. But that can be done quite easily. Nice to meet you too, Marcos. Oh, good. Good you didn't lose too much progress there set up for lunch. Ah, yes, this is very fancy. Uh, I agree. This hammer is it's kind of like a sports car in many ways. This works closer to Blender rather than the current hammer for Source 1. There's a lot of features in this that I could only dream of previously, but they both do well for what they do. Thank you, Anzu, for any subscription, whether that be the traditional streaming sense or the traditional YouTube sense. Um, so today I'm mostly just adding in new props, Mark Host. Um, because Valve have released a couple of maps since the last time I worked on this one myself, uh, and some of those maps are very thematically related, I figure might be a good idea to try and make use of them, especially because they help to bring some of the ideas I originally had for this to life a bit better. That includes a lot of the foliage stuff. Um, the foliage has been an idea of mine related to Nova Prospect for a while. I figure that since there are many holes blasted open in the ceiling of the place, figure that some plant life might have escaped down into the building itself. Um, so right now I'm using mostly the basic just drag and drop and copy and paste. But Source 2 has a variety of features. So the block tool over here helps create the level geometry like this. So the floors, the walls, ceilings, stuff like that. Um, Hammer is very, very different from how a lot of other level editors work. Please put auto viz groups, selection sets, an outliner, and an asset browser into one box. I've never considered that. Right now, I'll figure out how to set that up, Carthal. But right now, I'm mostly just using Hammer. As you mean over here? Is there a way to put them all in one box? Never messed with the settings all that much. In terms of this stuff here, actually, I don't usually use selection sets, so we can get rid of that for now. I'll have to look up more on how to set up a lot of the screen. Um, I've just been using it this way myself, as you can get a lot of quick access to certain props just from here. Ah, I see. Thank you for that information. I did not know you could tab it up like this. Perfect. I appreciate that. Apologies there, Zuko. I am in my 20s. Alright, but do want to grab a couple extra things. Bring this over here. I like to imagine that this rubble has been here for a very long while, and that even the rubble is starting to grow greenery. And we'll bring this down here. And then bring this over this way. What about this up here? Or this one? Okay, that one will have to, over by the spawn will have to stay small, but... Ah, there we go. Apologies for that. Things were taking a moment. Yeah, I've been experimenting off and on Zuko as well with Half-Life Alyx and well, Counter-Strike 2 for Source 2. Still a lot of things to learn with this. There's, as you can see, there's a whole lot to do. A whole lot of stuff that can be done to change and optimize different things. There's a lot of small nooks and crannies and details I've yet to learn. I've got way more time in Source One to hammer. So, um, yes, Anzu. Source Two works very similar to Source One. Um, so inputs and outputs still do most of the scripting. Um, you still have to be concerned with like brushes and props. Um, Technically, brushes are called meshes now, as they've moved towards a system closer to Blender, 3ds Max, Maya, stuff like that. Um, there's even some behind the scenes scripting in terms of like scene files and stuff that are very similar between the two engines. Um, when converting Source 1 maps into Source 2, it does actually preserve input output scripting too, from what I found, for the most part. Certain entities have been removed between the two engines, so sometimes if you're using one type of entity, it doesn't work in the engines. I believe Half-Life Alyx removed a lot of the tank and like the various trains, like tank train, funk train, stuff like that. So some of that scripting isn't preserved between the two engines, unfortunately. Which is a bit of a shame. Though maybe there's ways around it that I haven't found yet. Around some of ways around some of that stuff that I haven't found yet. I should say. There's a Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to this engine that I still learn. I learn new things every day, like how Carthau here has taught me some new stuff about how some of the windows work, which I very much appreciate. I thank you, Cartho. That will make things a lot easier in the future. And then we'll do this for this out of bounds area. Some good extra foliage. We might be able to even do a tiny bit more. The reason why I'm being very particular with the models I use here is because, like I said, Source 2 packs in a very similar way to some of the tools you can get for Source 1. And what that means is that it packs in, it takes the models and textures that you use in a map and sort of merges it with the map file itself, which means you don't want something that's only used once, unless it's something really big for the visuals or gameplay, because then you're essentially kind of just eating into extra space for something that's not used very often if it's not essential to the gameplay or the visual component of the map. So reusing stuff, at least in this case, if done well, can go a long way into making the space more optimally used. There. And one thing, all lighting to get a nice quick lighting preview. Actually, some of the dirt here on this texture can probably just have stuff run a little rampant. There we go. Um, Ackland Trayer, do you mean in terms of difference between Source 2 versions or between Source 2 and Source 1 in terms of the differences? Okay. We'll add more of this around here. Some of this foliage. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Ooh. Actually, might be able to, hang on. Add this in here. I think as well, now that I'm thinking about it, I can also show you guys a little bit of I'm thinking I might want to actually put in some extra detail back here. We can actually get in this chunk of the original level or version that I have edited uh, back behind these doors. As Source 2 can handle quite a bit more detail. In fact, we can actually expand this out a little bit more. Maybe. I actually don't think we need to. This back here, I think, would be nice to have a bit more detail on. To answer your question, Ackland, the among the Source 2 versions, I think Sandbox is definitely very different than how it might actually be the most different, to answer your question, between all the various Source 2 versions. Um, but in terms of Valve's own released Source 2 hammers, CS2 has got quite a number of differences with Half-Life Alyx for smaller things, in terms of how lighting is handled, how audio is handled, how other smaller things are done. Um, the audio has now a full new system that's sort of edited in a way that's like sort of it's sort of like a ray traced audio system in a way. I haven't I still need to do more experimenting on how to get it to work, but I know that there's a lot more stuff that like changes the way the audio works. And it's done at a map level. You can essentially put down like block sound um, brushes and meshes around, which is very different than how it works in Alex, where sound operates sort of like it does in Source 1, more or less the way it does in Source 1, though there's a lot more layering for sound in Half-Life Alyx. Um, I'm just going to open up a Source 1 file of my making here to help bring in a bit more detail to this. Give this just one moment as it's loading up. Yes, I would say Source 2 has a lot more tools for a lot more smaller things. There's stuff like smart props too, which are sort of like Unreal blueprints, stuff like that. Hello there, Jeffinator. It's good to see you again. My day is going well. Hopefully your day is also going well. I apologies here for the red error textures, I have brought in source one map here that I'm going to see if I can bring over into this map. So we'll grab this. Let's turn that off. We can do here. And this is sort of how I create maps generally, is sometimes I'll take chunks of a level and I will bring it in to then whittle it down. Since we're not going to have this whole section be playable, we don't need all of it. What we'll do here is group this, so now we can move it around. We can start clearing that off. Oh, another thing that CS2's version of Source 2 does is it can it converts. So how do I put this? The overlay system got an overhaul between Source 1 and Source 2. And when you convert Source 1 maps into Half-Life Alyx, it retains a weird version of the Source 1 overlays. And it doesn't convert them into Source 2's version of overlays, but CS2 does convert, which is very cool. And it makes things a lot easier. There we go. Big difference with Source 1 and Source 2 is that AI nodes are no longer needed. Instead, everything is done through a nav mesh. And cube maps are also done very differently. Cube maps are done through a whole new system. We're going to have to get rid of some of this. With Source 2 as well, no draw is no longer needed at all. And we can just take away those faces. And in this case, we don't even really need stuff beyond a certain point because it won't be visible as it's not going to be part of this level. At least, I don't think it will be. I think it'll be too large. So we'll just clear this out. Do this. Might just Here's a cool little thing you can do with source 2. You can find a texture and then just drag and drop it. So what I'm doing here is I'm double clicking on a brush to grab all the faces and then just deleting all the ones we don't want. Yes, I have noticed that there's a quickening of compile times to Carthau with the CS2 version of Hammer, which is very nice. Um, I'm glad to hear that, Jeffinator, that your day is going well. I have considered making games. Um, I have a couple of ideas. Just trying to hopefully one day figure out the best medium to put those games out. I won't go into much detail with those ideas as I'd like those to be a surprise, but that is the big thing. Yeah, unfortunately, Ackland Trayer and Carthau can probably vouch for this. CS2 overall is a lot heavier on systems than Source 1, so they're very, both versions can eat away a lot of memory, a lot of RAM, um, because of the way that all the lighting is handled and everything is compiled. I believe you need, in order for the maps to compile in CS2, you actually need an RTX or equivalent card that can do certain ray trace effects, unfortunately. Um, so yeah. Yes, this is a lot of errors, Jeff. There, since I pulled this directly from uh, the first source engine, a lot of these textures don't exist, unfortunately. But we can make it a little bit easier on the eyes. There we go. I won't do a more sweeping conversion of textures just yet, because I want to go in and remove the no draw textures, as like I said, they are now useless. Well, they're not useless. They're just they don't serve a function much anymore in Source 2. Instead, you don't want a face to render but still do certain things. You mostly use block light. Let me just fix things here. There we go. A little bit easier to look at. And we can do that. The way that brush faces are rendered now is a little different, and certain ones are counted. So it's still a good idea to just remove things that aren't used. And there we go. A little bit better looking. This doesn't need to be great, as this will all be texture replaced anyways later. But this is better than it was just moments ago. We can actually just remove certain things outright, as they won't be seen, since a lot of this will be background detail. Stuff up here, for example. Can just go. Oops. And then wherever it leaks out into the void, we can just put up a brush blocking things. Since this won't be seen, a lot of this can just be removed. That one might be visible. Go. Just do this. And voila. I'm glad to hear that, V&T. I thank you for the kind words. Hopefully, the map is what you wanted it to be. I quite enjoy Nova Prospect myself, Wallace Mora. Uh, Jeff, in to describe Half-Life to someone who's only played Doom, that's a great question. Hmm, maybe well, Half-Life 1, maybe like if you're talking about classic Doom, then maybe something like it's a it's like Quake. Well, no, if they've only played Doom, then they don't know what Quake is. What about it's like Doom but 3D and with scientists, and the demons are actually aliens? Maybe. Um, Doom. It's Doom, but instead of fighting alone, you get allies against aliens. So maybe something like that. Hmm. There's got to be something there. There's gotta be a way to describe it with something like that. I'm a bit actually surprised that there hasn't been Doom mods, or at least maybe there is. I just haven't heard it, but that there aren't any big mods that take stuff from the original Dooms and adds them to either Half-Life 2 or Half-Life 1. Or Quake for that matter, given Quake's history with the Half-Life franchise. Even this can go here. All this can go. Go. That. This. Okay. Actually, that one might be seen. We'll have to double check. This can go away. This can go away. That. This. This. And we'll do this. There we go. Bit better. Alright, this one can absolutely be removed. Okay. So now we've got a good amount of this done. We can actually start aligning it. Where is meant to go? Since it's going to be here. All right. It's not exact, but it's a good starting place for the alignment. We'll tweak it as we go. We'll need to remove this. This is where the glass is usually, but we have some custom stuff that will need to go there. And it does help us see what we're going to see. So everything back here is going to go away. All this back here is also going to go away since this won't be seen, won't be visible. And we'll just do this to make it a little easier on the eyes. Thank you, Jim Jelly, Jin Jam Jimbo. Great name. I thank you for all the kind words. Also, hello there, Joanna. That's an interesting question, VNT. I've thought about working on some of the canal stuff. I think I was talking to someone previously about that. Also, thanks Keats Vids for the subscription. I've been thinking about doing some of the extra canal stuff for maps for Gmod. It's been recommended. Um, I'll just have to work and see what I can do to make one that's got some good playable content. Uh, at least for my style. As you can probably see in the chat further up above, Soda for Lunch has done some great work sandboxing a whole bunch of the Half-Life 2 levels. So there is that. Um, I am doing a bit of what you think I am, just Jeffinator. This is going to be mostly a background area. Um, but it's, I think, within the realm of possibility. Just removing a couple of extra things. Um, Stuff that isn't visible. Sometimes you have to work large and then down in order for it to work. I'm sorry about that, Joanna. Hope you enjoy what you do get to be able to see. Yes, I do personally enjoy Source 2 Hammer, Fantastic Boom. Source 2 Hammer has a lot of neat features, a lot of cool things that it can do. My favorite of which is actually, you can just write this. You can do this. You can actually just outright remove entire faces on brushes without disrupting anything else, which is so very nice. And with the way that Vives has been reworked, only faces now are what define um, what gets portals and not, which makes things so much nicer. And because of that, you can also now make level brushwork that doesn't spill over too much off what can be used. So there's not a lot of with source one. Sometimes when you make brushes, it can spill out over into the void, but you can actually remove that. Just use only what is necessary. Oops. Um, and for those who are wondering, I am working on stuff for Gmod. I do have something I'm making, Day of Defeat themed. It's going well, and actually, some of the work that I've done uh, editing the Dead Center map from the past couple streams has actually had it allowed me to actually consider doing some major stuff with that. As I might be able to optimize the map so significantly that I can just put in a whole lot of stuff, which will be very cool. Um, so I'm working on that in the background. Oops. This entire back area won't be visible. So we can just keep removing stuff Don't have to worry about aligning all these textures if there's nothing that needs to be aligned. Which means all this can go too. And all of this can go. Yeah. We'll just put up just extend this here. Actually, we can do that now. So it'll be just on this side here. Perfect. Anything over here, it does not need to be, well, needed. Except that one. This can also go. And that one too. Actually, move that. And do that. A lot of that will be blocked off. We'll need those. We can do actually the same on this side, or we just do that. Anything here? On this side can be removed. And then we'll just expand this up this way. Actually, we don't even need to do that. We can just bring in another one. Close that up. And we'll just send it this way. And just remove some of these extra details that won't be seen. This, have to get that lighting up. That's fine. And we can even keep moving this forward more. We'll do it to that, where that skylight used to be. Which is right there. Now that is far more reasonable. All this can be removed. Nope, not the wall. Wall needs to stay. Glow can be removed. And then all this stuff with the screen, since it won't be visible. Yeah, some of the smaller gizmos and stuff do disappear, both in this and in Source 1. It's a bit odd, but once you get used to it, it's something that can be worked with their Jeffinator. I, as well, also enjoy when certain areas are expanded. Uh, Jim Jelly Gin. Um, I'm gonna have to do a lot of optimization here, and it should be quite simple, really, now that the art style has been decided by previous me. A lot of the old cells can just have a door, so that way, like in front of where the cell is, so that way it can't be seen in. So there's not extra space that needs to be rendered. So that should hopefully keep things a bit more optimized. Um, and since I can also play with some of the extra areas and things that aren't visible from the perspective of the player, which is roughly about where the camera is looking now, I can touch that up. Uh, I think Jeffinator, this, and Jim Jelly, this Day of Defeat map is going to be very interesting. What I'll say is that I've expanded one of the maps out uh, quite significantly, including using some of the skybox um, terrain and other things like that to create what could be a very interesting opportunity for gameplay in all sorts of different areas. Um, and hopefully, if things go well, I might be able to do extra versions of the map that could do some interesting things that I don't think have really been done by me or others on the workshop before. Uh, but that's still a bit out. Have to finish the map as is. And yes, if anyone's working on a hammer or anything else creative, make sure you save right now. Always make sure you're saving. If you're working in Unity, also save. If you're working on Unreal, save. If you're working in Word, Excel, save. It's always a good idea. I will be that person to everyone in chat if need be. That make sure you are saving. I think only that one is not going to be visible. This. So like no draw, sorry, in the olden days, solid block light does a lot of the same thing. It technically means that the face isn't really there, but it does create shadows and affects lighting. And in a space like this, it's a good idea to ensure that the lighting works even if the face is no longer going to be visible. And really worst case scenario, we can just texture it. So that is also an option. But we'll start with this since it will make the face just not visible and save a little bit of that memory. that, we have now already reduced. We've already done a major chunk of work. Actually, that might need to be. I'll have to relook at how I did this in Source 1 or how it was done by Valve in Source 1 for this, but might be able to just remove all that. Um, we can also do. There we go. So now when you look up, there will be some lighting bouncing off some of the walls. And then we'll convert the cube maps as well at some point. I'll have to tweak the color as well. But we now have the lighting started. We can deal with the rope as well. At some point, we'll deal with it. Glad I could help with the saving. Jeff, I'll catch you around. It's been nice seeing you. We'll drink plenty of water. Thank you. I've thought about stuff, Jim, with Black Mesa now that it's been integrated, or not integrated, but it's been connected to Gmod. Actually, same thing with Insurgency, the original version of the game, not Sandstorm, since that's also now gotten connected to Gmod proper as well. Um, I have a couple of ideas for them, but we'll see. I want to work on some of this other stuff first, uh, since some of this other stuff has been requested for longer. light I didn't see. A light that I didn't spot. It's a little hammer humor. Okay. What we can do is we'll search here for all of the cube maps. Just the generic cube map. We'll convert that into a combined the environment, the ENV combined light probe volume, as that is now part of what creates cube maps now in source 2, as well as other things. Affects lighting. Brightness of that will have to be changed, but that's okay. And what we can do is actually extend that over and extend it up. Yes, here we go. Nice. And now, this is mostly enclosed in. We can even just get rid of this. I'll extend this all the way back here. We can even extend some of this up. Bring this over. And now the map is, this section is mostly enclosed in. We'll have to slowly work and chip away at some of this texturing in order for it to look quite fancy. Which is a-okay with me. This. And more optimization will be done over time to get the various walls and stuff reworked to be more optimized. Thank you, Jim Jelly. I appreciate the kind words. I do have yeah, I've got some ideas. We'll see though. Um I would imagine the insurgent, if I were to do one of those, insurgency would probably come first, as there's a couple things I'd want to remake. And I think insurgency has the assets that I would be looking for that. Yeah, a lot of Source 2 Hammer is very similar to UE5 in terms of like its layout and design and everything. Electrical power company. A lot of cross ideas like that. Though there are a lot of differences with UE5. For example, a lot of the work on textures and stuff isn't done in here, like sort of like how it is in UE5. A lot of the asset work is done in programs that are interconnected, but not part of Unreal itself. Or yeah, I think I said that right. Yeah. Okay. Still good. We can get rid of this. Actually, then wait, which? Oh, it's this one. So what we'll do is this. Then what we can do is change these textures. Change these textures. As I said earlier, a lot of the devils in the details, even some of the smallest optimizations and changes like this can go a long way in getting a map to run and look well. So I'm just going to make sure everything is done well. And thankfully, Source 2 has quite a lot of ways to optimize stuff. A lot of cool little small ways. So that is what we're doing. rid of that. Do this. And good. And despite just bringing this in today, we've already optimized and set this up very, very well, very quickly. Do this. Yeah. Um, with some of the Left 4 Dead, uh, that's actually an interesting point. I might actually be able to move some of what I make into some of the other games workshops, Jim Jelly. Um, I definitely think it would be made first with Gmod in mind, but now that I've learned more tricks with uh, proper plus plus, I might actually be able to bring at least some of this stuff into other games where the limits for brushes and props are significantly lower than Gmod. So it's possible. There would be have to be some edits, obviously, for some gameplay considerations, but I might be able to do that. Um, I have considered doing stuff for some of the work that I've done for Left 4 Dead 2 or Counter Strike into like Left 4 Dead or Counter Strike. But I'll have to see. I did do a port of Counter Strike stuff into Gmod, so it's very possible I could do the inverse at some point. I mean, technically, right now I have imported a bit of the work I've done on Gmod into Source 2. That's actually what this section of this map is. It was the version of Half-Life, like the Half-Life 2's Nova Prospect, edited for Gmod, and now in Counter Strike 2. So it's possible. I'll give more thought to it. Maybe we can get some cross-game stuff going. Well, maybe one day I'll even consider porting stuff over to Halo. I have taken a look at their mapping stuff before. Anything is possible. But I make no specific guarantees on anything. Not at the moment, at least. Okay. And be able to do this. And very good. Oh, and perfect. More stuff that can be optimized and removed out. And we'll do this. And that is an optimized background area, mostly. Mostly optimized. Oh, you know what? Yes, let's solve this before we go anywhere else. And with that, we can do this. And this. Bring this here. Okay, and then that will have to be split up separately. That's pretty good for this day's effort. I appreciate the compliment there, Jim Jelly. Uh, I have considered doing some stuff through Sapien. I have messed with it a little bit. Um, I would need to do a bit more. Uh, Thankfully, since the last time I seriously attempted anything with Sapien, there's been a lot more documentation and tools similar to how Source has had some stuff. So that might help me get into it a bit more. So I'll have to take a look at that a bit more. Uh, I think while I have some thoughts on campaign evolves creative decisions, I think overall, if you've never played uh CE, it's fine enough to act as a good entryway. Into the series. I I think yeah, I don't think it's a bad place to start. Okay. I think with the addition of the new background area and then a lot of the optimization we've done, I think that might be a good place to call the stream for today. It was a pleasure to see y'all again. It's good to talk to y'all. I hope everyone is staying cool out in these final days of summer. Everyone's also drinking water and staying safe out there. I will be back sometime, definitely next Friday. Actually, no. I'll definitely be streaming next Thursday. I have to do something next Friday, but I can do a stream on Thursday. And maybe I'll do one on Saturday. But yes, it was a pleasure as always, and I shall catch you all very soon. Take care. Stay